Namaskar. A warm welcome to the World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Vaibhav Jyotsna Srivastav, and with me is Nishit Kumar, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. China and the US to hold virtual summit on Tuesday. Taiwan issue likely to top the agenda. Myanmar military court releases US journalist sentenced to 11 years in prison over sedition and terrorism charges. Austria imposes lockdown for unvaccinated people to contain a rise in COVID-19 cases. India's apex court directs the central government to call on emergency meeting of states to deal with toxic smog in the national capital region. Heavy rain batters southern Indian state of Kerala. Met Department issues orange alert in 6 districts of the state. India successfully launches the 41st scientific expedition to Antarctica. And films of Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award winners Istvan Zabur and Martin Scorsese to be showcased at the 52nd IFFI. As India created history by administering 100 crore vaccine doses against COVID-19, All India Radio salutes all the doctors, nurses, other frontline workers, and all those who got vaccinated and made this possible. Even though the country has achieved this feat, we caution our listeners that the battle against COVID is not yet over. We appeal to our listeners to get fully vaccinated at the earliest and also help others get vaccinated. During the festival season, please follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011-2397-8046 and 1075. And now, the news in detail.
China and the US will hold a virtual summit on Tuesday. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said that Chinese President Xi Jinping will meet with the US President Joe Biden via video link on the morning of November the 16th. The meeting will be the first bilateral meeting between the two leaders since Joe Biden became the US President in January. Taiwan and Afghanistan are likely to figure prominently in the talks. And to discuss Tuesday's meet further, we are joined by Anshuman Mishra, our special correspondent in Beijing. So Anshuman, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian, has said that currently the Sino-US relations are at critical crossroads. So what do you think makes this meeting so significant for the two nations and the rest of the world?
Nishit, US and China have been at loggerheads over a range of issues since the times of Trump administration, from tensions over trade and technology to human rights issues and transparency over the origin of COVID-19 pandemic. Taiwan, which was able to gain open support from US recently, is likely to top the agenda tomorrow, in addition to issues related to Indo-Pacific region. Tomorrow's meeting will take place in the backdrop of rapid developments in Afghanistan, where China has been accusing the US of a chaotic withdrawal and has recently concluded Troika Plus meeting. These are strategic issues related to the future of China-US relations and also important for the rest of the world. The two leaders have talked twice by phone since President Biden took office in January, but tomorrow's video conference will be their most substantial discussions so far. Moreover, President Xi has already cemented his position domestically by passage of historic resolution at the recently concluded 6th plenary session of Communist Party Central Committee and is all set for his 3rd term as president. So tomorrow's meeting should be seen in the light of all these facts.
Well, now, as we are witnessing that, tensions between the US and China have been on the rise over Taiwan recently. And the US President Joe Biden asserted his rock-solid commitment to Taiwan after China flew a record number of fighter planes over Taiwan's airspace. Now, this has led to speculation about a shift from the US policy of strategic ambiguity. So what are your views on this?
Well, experts may see it as a rock-solid support and US intent towards Taiwan, and US has taken a series of steps as well to raise Taiwan's status, but nothing has officially come out so far. So in the foreseeable future, the US policy is likely to continue as it is. However, a lot will depend on what comes out tomorrow amid Beijing's concerns about whether the Biden administration was really sticking to its one China policy.
Well, Anshuman, the meet comes in the backdrop of the recently concluded COP26 meet in which the US and China made a joint pledge to cooperate in climate action. So what do you make of the situation in which both the sides recognize the need to cooperate over global issues which have serious differences on others?
Nishid, this is one area where both countries can continue to remain in touch. China and US are top two carbon emitters. US has been historically emitting carbon during its developmental path, and China is the current largest carbon emitter. I would say this is the way both countries will try to remain in touch and to reduce the lack of communication or miscommunication, and also to show their efforts to manage an issue which affects entire humanity.
And what other issues are expected to come up in the meet?
Nishit, experts say that the relationship has become more transactional in nature, and Beijing has been signaling its interest in making progress on trade. So that might be one important issue tomorrow. Another issue will be Beijing Winter Olympics, which is facing a diplomatic boycott call, and President Xi will be seeking to head off any such moves. And reportedly, he is also expected to invite President Biden to the Games as a conciliatory gesture.
Well, thanks, Anshuman, for your input. That was Anshuman Mishra, our special correspondent in Beijing.
A U.S. journalist who had been sentenced to 11 years in prison by a Myanmar military court was released on Monday. Former U.S. ambassador to the UN, Bill Richardson, in a statement on Monday said that Fenster had been handed over to him in Myanmar and would return to the U.S. via Qatar. A report.
American journalist Danny Fenster was sentenced to 11 years imprisonment by Myanmar court on Friday. He was charged with incitement and violations of immigration and unlawful association laws. Fenster is the first Western journalist sentenced to jail term by the military government of Myanmar. He was arrested on the 24th of May, just before boarding a flight to Malaysia. Last week, additional charges of sedition and terrorism were slapped against Fenster, which are punishable by a maximum jail term of 20 years. The U.S. State Department had earlier called his detention as profoundly unjust. Spokesperson Ned Price had condemned the arrest. Danny Fenster, who was working as the managing editor of the online magazine Frontier Myanmar, earlier worked for Myanmar Now, which he quit in July 2020. On Monday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken welcomed the release of American journalist Daniel Fenster from the prison in Burma, where he was wrongfully detained for almost 6 months. Ramya for World News.
Indian naval ship INS Karmuk, an indigenously built missile corvette, is participating in the third edition of India, Singapore and Thailand Trilateral Maritime Exercise SITMEX 21. The multilateral exercise is being held on the 15th and the 16th of November in the Andaman Sea. The Singapore Navy is represented by RSS Tenacious and the Royal Thai Navy by His Majesty's Thailand ship HTMS Thaichon, a Khamrosan-class anti-submarine patrol craft. The Defence Ministry in a statement said that SITMEX has been conducted annually since 2019 with an aim to enhance mutual interoperability and imbibing best practices between the three friendly navies. The exercise is being conducted as a non-contact at-sea only exercise in view of COVID restrictions.
Austria imposed a lockdown for unvaccinated people starting Monday. Austrian Chancellor Alexander Schallenberg had announced the decision on Sunday. He justified the decision to raise the vaccination rate, which is described as shamefully low in the country according to reports. People who have not been fully vaccinated against COVID will only be allowed to leave their homes for specific purposes, including for getting vaccinated. The Austrian government is introducing random checks to ensure compliance. Austria has lately seen a rise in the number of reported COVID cases. On Saturday, Austria recorded 13,152 new coronavirus cases. India's Apex Court on Monday directed the central government to call an emergency meeting of states and other authorities on Tuesday to chalk out immediate steps to reduce the toxic smog in the national capital region. It said that it would hear the matter again on Wednesday. The Apex Court also directed that the centre and the state governments should consider work from home for their employees in and around Delhi, and farmers should be persuaded not to burn farm waste to cut down pollution. A special bench comprising Chief Justice of India N.V. Ramana and Justices D.Y. Chandrachud and Suryakant was hearing a plea by a 17-year-old Delhi student Aditya Dubey concerning rising levels of air pollution in the capital.
Meanwhile, the Commission for Air Quality Management and NCR and adjoining areas convened a crucial meeting on an emergent basis on Sunday on the deteriorating air quality of the Delhi NCR region. It has asked states and concerned agencies to be in complete readiness for implementing emergency measures as listed under Graded Response Action Plan. The Delhi government has ordered the closure of schools up to the 20th of this month and closure of construction and demolition activities from 14th to the 17th of November. In the southern Indian state of Kerala, heavy rain has disrupted normal life in southern districts of the state. However, the slight decrease in the severity of the rainfall in some areas brought relief for the people. We have a report.
Heavy rains continue to batter Kuttanad as many regions are flooded. Authorities have declared holiday for all educational institutions in Alappuzha and Pathanamthitta districts tomorrow. As heavy rains continues, the water level in Mullaperiyar Dam is approaching its maximum storage capacity. The shutters of the dam is expected to be opened soon. People on the banks of Periyar are urged to be alert. Met Department predicts heavy rains in the state for the next 2 days. Fisher folks are warned from venturing into the sea in Kerala Lakshadweep coast. Mayusha for AR News from Thiruvananthapuram.
This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on our Twitter handle at AIR News Alerts.
India's Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri is leading a 3-day official and business delegation to the UAE from Monday to attend the Abu Dhabi International Petroleum Exhibition and Conference. Mr. Puri will also inaugurate the oil and gas sectoral floor at the India Pavilion of the Dubai Expo. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on India-Uae ties, which is growing from strength to strength. In conversation are Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former ambassador, and Manas Pratim Bhuya, a journalist.
We have seen a massive upswing in ties between India and UAE in diverse fields, including trade and investment, strategic affairs, and people-to-people contact in the last 5 to 6 years. The ties have been expanding at a very rapid pace. Our External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar paid a 2-day visit to UAE on beginning Saturday, and yesterday he held a meeting with the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and Deputy Supreme Commander of the UAE Armed Forces, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and discussed with him the various aspects of the strategic ties between the two countries. Ambassador Trigunayat, how do you see the overall trajectory of India's ties with the United Arab Emirates in the last few years, particularly in the last 5 to 6 years?
Thank you, Manaji. Good evening. In fact, you rightly mentioned that the relationship between India and the UAE in particular, and India and West Asia, and especially the Gulf region, has been on an upswing in the past 6-7 years, or rather from 2008 onwards. Before that, we had seen the relationships were generally taken as granted or were predicated on how their relationship with Pakistan was. I would term it, even though P2P connect, people-to-people connect was very much there, and India had the largest number of over 9 million people present there, working in different countries. What we had seen is that the relationship was mostly transactional. But in the past few years, with Prime Minister Modi's first visit to UAE and thereafter 3 visits he has made already, and high-level exchanges, and we had the UAE's Crown Prince as our chief guest at the Republic Day, which is one of the highest honors that we give. Likewise, they also honored Prime Minister Modi with their highest award. And so we have seen the relationship has moved at the P2P level, because as well as at the leadership-to-leadership level, at a much higher pace in a much more intrinsic manner. As you know, that UAE has been our third or sometimes second largest trading partner. We have more than 5,000 Indian companies present in UAE. We have largest number of Indians living in the UAE, about 3.3 million, who are really sending a lot of remittances to India. In addition, the relationship has turned into strategic partnership, not only in name, but in reality. What are the indicators of that? Changes of delegations, the expansion of the areas of collaboration, and what we are seeing in the strategic investments in each other's country. And so, for the first time, UAE invited India to participate in its upstream and downstream oil sector. It has started investing in India as a strategic reserve. They have committed to about $75 billion worth of investment. They are looking at working together in this space, in nuclear energy, in the renewables, So there are so many newer dimensions that have come. More importantly, earlier we used to have great difficulty in getting these fugitives, economic fugitives or criminals who used to go to Dubai, and it was very difficult to get them back. But today, UAE has been one of the countries that has very expeditiously sent back the offenders of the Indian law very quickly. I mean, you know the names of those people. And so that shows the kind of confidence that is happening. So it is no longer transactional. It has become truly strategic in many ways. And as you know, only a few weeks ago, we had the Minister of State for Foreign Trade from UAE who came here, and they want to discuss a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with India. I mean, that is being already discussed. And now this has been followed through during the visit of Honorable External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. And India has the largest pavilion, as you know, at the Dubai Expo, which is one of the biggest events in the post-COVID era, or rather middle of the COVID. But at the same time, we are also seeing that there are a new kind of an economic collaborative mechanism that has emerged. When Dr. Jaishankar earlier this month was in Israel, at that time a new quartet was formed with US, UAE, and Israel and India, which was for the economic forum. And that is something that is being followed through now. So we have a lot of new areas in which we are working. And as you know that the UAE will be hosting the COP28 in 2023, and India will be the chair for G20 in 2023. So therefore G20 and the COP, these two are very important as far as the climate change areas are. So I think that the two countries will be leading two very important initiatives. Therefore their collaboration is extremely important.
Ambassador Trigunath, you very rightly said that momentum of the relationship has seen renewed vigor in the last few years. I mean, it is reflected from the fact that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he visited UAE first in 2015 August, then again he visited UAE in 2018, and again he visited UAE in August 2019. And similarly, there were high-level visits, including by the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi to India. So overall, in the defense sector, we have seen our Army Chief General M.M. Naravane visited UAE late last year. So how do you see the overall trajectory of strategic and defense cooperation between UAE and India?
You know, strategic cooperation, as I mentioned, has many dimensions. And one of them in today's time and age is how do we work together as our two countries move towards or cope up with the artificial intelligence driven industrial revolution 4.0. That is very important. In that domain, cybersecurity becomes a very important. Maritime security is very, very important. Anti-piracy becomes very important. As such, the whole region is extremely important from India's perspective. So what I am seeing is that the strategic partnership in the defense area has actually increased significantly between India and UAE. And I think that even now when Dr. Jaishankar is there was a UAE Dubai show, which was one of the biggest, and where the Indian companies, Indian Sarang aerobatics team and our Dhruv helicopters, and I think that some other equipment was shown there very much in the place. So they know that they want India to play greater role in the defense sector.
Yeah, Ambassador Trigunath, again, in fact, you rightly mentioned that the meeting of India, UAE, US and Israel in exploring collaborative approach in dealing with major challenges facing the region. So how do you see the overall collaboration between all these four very, very key players, India, UAE, US and Israel joining these three countries? It's a new kind of approach that we have seen. And do you think this quadrilateral, and people are also calling it as Quad, how it is going to expand, and what kind of cooperation you would like to see under this new framework of cooperation between these four very, very important countries?
Well, from India's perspective, if you come to think of it, all the three countries, whether it is Israel, US or UAE, are this strategic partner. You know, the UAE, as I mentioned already, the great trade and investment partner. It is becoming a truly strategic partner. With the US, our relationship has gone to a very new height. And as you know, in the defense sector, in the economic sector, US is our largest trading partner. This year, of course, China has taken over again. But then and UAE is our third largest trading partner. And then the Israelis are our third largest partner in defense, and agricultural technologies are other. So what I see is that this is somehow trying to exploit these synergies. And as you know, with the previous president, US President Donald Trump, they had worked out a mechanism called Abraham Accords, which was between US, UAE and Israel, three countries, and thereafter Bahrain and Morocco and Sudan also joined that. So that was to integrate somehow the Israeli interest within the whole of West Asia, or especially the Gulf countries. And there India has great stakes in the stability of the region And I find that we have much more in common to work together. Besides, as you know, I mentioned about comprehensive economic partnership agreement with UAE we are discussing now. We are discussing a free trade agreement was agreed during the visit of Dr. Jaishankar to Israel. And we are discussing a mini trade deal with the US. So you can imagine that India is working bilaterally with these countries. And if all those synergies are added to this complex view, which you called as quad, but I call it as quartet, then I think that is a very favorable development. More importantly, I feel that on a trilateral basis between India, Israel, and UAE, we can work together in third countries and continents. For example, in Africa, as far as food security is concerned, because Israel has very good agricultural technology and UAE has some funding available. India has great expertise in the agricultural sector. So we can work together. Likewise, in the solar energy area, all the countries are now members of the ISA, International Solar Alliance, which was an initiative by India. So it is in that context that I see that there is a lot of potential and possibilities that we can work together.
So the Dubai Expo is going on, and India is also showcasing its investment potential and cultural heritage at the Expo, which is being billed as one of the biggest of its kind and being hosted at a cost of a whopping $7 billion. So, in fact, the Indian pavilion at the Expo is one of the largest, and it has been showcasing India's vibrant culture along with economic opportunities that India offers in multiple sectors like health, textile, infrastructure, services, and many more areas. So how do you see India's participation at the Expo, and do you think, Ambassador Trigunayat, it will help India in attracting investment from the Gulf region?
Well, of course, I mean, the Gulf region understands that India is a viable investment destination, and that is the region you have seen that Saudi Arabia has committed about $100 billion in investments in India. And even during the pandemic, billions of dollars have been invested by these countries. As I mentioned earlier, UAE is already committed to investing $75 billion. But all these countries are also looking to invest Indian investments in apart from Indian companies participating in the projects there. So it is a two-way street, I see. And what I understand, I have not been there, but what I understand is one of the finest display that India has undertaken in many years now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
India has successfully launched the 41st scientific expedition to Antarctica with the arrival of the first batch of its contingent at the southern white continent. The first batch of 23 scientists and support staff reached the Indian Antarctic station Maitri last week. 4 more batches shall be landing in Antarctica by air using Drumland facility and on-board chartered ice-class vessel MV Vasily Golovnin by the mid of January 2022. The 41st expedition has 2 major programs. The first encompasses geological exploration of the Ameri ice shelf at Bharati Station. This will help explore the link between India and Antarctica in the past. The second program involves reconnaissance, surveys and preparatory work for drilling of 500 meters of ice core near Maitri. It will help in improving the understanding of Antarctic climate, westerly winds, sea ice and greenhouse gases from a single climate archive for the past 10,000 years. The Indian Antarctic program, which began in 1981, has completed 40 scientific expeditions and built 3 permanent research base stations in Antarctica named Dakshin Gangotri, Maitri and Bharati.
The International Film Festival of India, IFFI, for the first time has instituted the Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award. This year, the award is being given to acclaimed Hungarian film director Istvan Szabó and American filmmaker actor Martin Scorsese. We have a report.
Istvan Szabó is one of the most critically acclaimed Hungarian film directors. He is credited with the making of movies like Mephisto and Father. The 1981 Academy Award-winning movie Mephisto portrays a passionate but struggling actor who remains in Germany during the Nazi regime. Father is a 1966 Hungarian drama film. It is a coming-of-age story of a boy who lost his father at a young age. The 2 movies, along with Szabó's 1985 movie Colonel Redl and 2001 hit Taking Sides, will be showcased at the 52nd IFFI in Goa. Martin Scorsese is one of the major figures of the new Hollywood era. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential directors in film history and directed major masterpieces like Shutter Island and the 1976 cult hit Taxi Driver, the 1990 mob movie Goodfellas, and Leonardo DiCaprio starrer 2013 hit The Wolf of Wall Street will also be showcased at the festival. The award celebrates the legacy of Satyajit Ray today and marks his birth centenary. Ramya for World News.
And now a report from the business world.
The BSE Sensex climbed 32 points or 0.05% to finish at 60,719. The NSE Nifty rose 7 points or 0.04% to end at 18,109. Amongst global stock markets, Asian shares edged higher but traded in a narrow range as investors showed cautious approach. South Korea's Kospi climbed 1% and Japan's Nikkei 225 rose 0.6%. Singapore's Straits Times added 0.4% and Hong Kong's Hang Seng gained 0.3%, while China's Shanghai Composite Index fell 0.2%. European markets were mixed and trading in a narrow range in intraday trade. Crude oil prices fell on expectations of increasing supply, while higher energy costs and rising COVID-19 cases are also being seen weighing on demand. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading around $81.20 per barrel. Back home, gold prices added 25 rupees at multi-commodity exchange for December contracts. The precious metal was trading at 49,340 rupees per 10 gram in intraday trade. On the other hand, silver declined 90 rupees to 67,055 rupees per kilogram for December contracts when reports last came in. And in the forex market, the rupee appreciated 4 paisa to close at 74 rupees and 49 paisa against the US dollar. Anubha Rohadki for World News, All India Radio.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Globe and the Mail says Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte runs for Senate. The Guardian reports Austrian police carry out routine checks as unvaccinated enter lockdown. Sputnik News writes Tehran concerned about spike in terrorist activities in Afghanistan. Financial Times writes Iraq to repatriate citizens trapped on Belarus-Poland border. South China Morning Post reports Putin says Russia ready to help resolve crisis at Poland-Belarus border. Khalij Times reports UAE's NCM records 70 aftershocks following earthquakes in Iran. Ceylon today writes Sri Lanka approves use of first anti-COVID pill, and Tashkent Times says Russia calls on the neighboring countries of Afghanistan to prevent the military presence of US and NATO forces on their territory.
External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has congratulated Professor Bimal Patel of the Rashtriya Raksha University on his election to the International Law Commission, ILC. In a tweet on Monday, Dr. Jaishankar said that he will surely serve the nation well in the prestigious body. Earlier in a tweet, the ministry spokesperson, Mr. Arindam Bagchi, said that Professor Patel had secured the highest number of votes in the Asia-Pacific group. Professor Bimal Patel was elected to the UN body on Saturday. The International Law Commission was established by the UN General Assembly in 1947. It is responsible to initiate studies and make recommendations for the purpose of encouraging the progressive development of international law and its codification. And now a quick look at the headlines once again. China and the US to hold virtual summit on Tuesday. Taiwan issue likely to top the agenda. Myanmar military court releases US journalist sentenced to 11 years in prison over sedition and terrorism charges. Austria imposes lockdown for unvaccinated people to contain a rise in COVID-19 cases. India's Apex Court directs the central government to call an emergency meeting of states to deal with toxic smog in the national capital region. Heavy rain batters southern Indian state of Kerala. Met Department issues orange alert in 6 districts of the state. India successfully launches 41st scientific expedition to Antarctica. And films of Satyajit Ray Lifetime Achievement Award winners Istvan Zabu and Martin Scorsese to be showcased at the 52nd IFFI. India is celebrating the 152nd birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav-jan, by artists from South Africa.
Vaishnav-jan to tene kaliye peed parai jane re sakal lok maan saune bandhe nindana kare ke re sakal lok maan saune bandhe nindana के नीरे बाच काच मन निश्चल राखे
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.